She was just another passenger, quietly dozing in row 19, when a tense announcement echoed through the cabin. "Any combat pilots on board?" Her heart raced. The plane was not in trouble yet, but the words hinted at chaos that only she could confront. Suddenly, her ordinary flight became a stage where courage, skill, and split-second decisions would determine the fate of everyone on board. Row 19 was quiet. The gentle hum of the engines blended with the low murmur of passengers flipping through magazines, tapping on phones, or dozing off mid-journey. She leaned back in her seat, eyes half closed, letting the rhythmic vibration lull her into a rare moment of peace. For hours, this flight had been uneventful, ordinary, almost forgettable. She had chosen this window seat for nothing more than the simple pleasure of watching clouds drift past the tiny oval frame of the airplane window. Little did she know, her ordinary day was about to shatter into something extraordinary. Her thoughts drifted, unconsciously revisiting fragments of her life before the flight. Years spent training, the long hours in simulators, the discipline etched into her reflexes, all of it tucked beneath the facade of civilian life. No one on this plane could guess the depth of her experience. To them, she was just another passenger, quietly reading the safety instructions, occasionally glancing at the flight attendants who moved like clockwork down the aisles. The hum of the engines shifted slightly, a subtle vibration that went unnoticed by most but pricked at her instincts. Pilots, after all, had a way of noticing small anomalies, subtle changes in sound, pressure, and rhythm that hinted at problems before they became visible. She shook off the unease. There was nothing to see yet, just a normal, routine flight. Around her, the cabin continued in calm monotony. A child giggled a few rows ahead, an elderly couple whispered over their crossword puzzle, and the flight attendants exchanged polite smiles as they navigated the aisle with practiced precision. For a fleeting moment, she almost envied their ignorance, the way they could enjoy this flight without the weight of anticipation pressing down on their shoulders. Then it came, the announcement that would pierce that fragile bubble of normalcy. "Any combat pilots on board?" The voice of the captain was steady, controlled, but there was an unmistakable urgency underlying the words. The cabin fell silent, a sudden, deafening pause as passengers turned their heads, trying to understand. A few chuckled nervously, assuming it was a drill, a bizarre in-flight joke. But she knew better. That specific phrasing, the direct call for combat-trained personnel, was never used lightly. Her pulse quickened, a familiar rhythm of adrenaline coursing through her veins. She sat frozen for a heartbeat, the world narrowing to a pinpoint focus. All the training, all the preparation that had seemed irrelevant in her civilian life, now surged forward with electrifying clarity. The quiet hum of the plane, the ordinary chatter, the smell of recycled air, all of it faded beneath the sudden, sharp clarity of purpose. She was no longer just a passenger. She was a potential savior, the only one with the skills to confront whatever unseen threat had prompted that announcement. Memories flashed unbidden, simulator drills, emergency landings, tense hours in control rooms where decisions could mean life or death. Each memory was a tool, a reminder that in moments like this, hesitation could be fatal. She drew a deep breath, feeling the familiar tightening in her chest that always preceded action. It was fear, yes, but also resolve. Every instinct screamed that this was her moment, that the safety of dozens depended on her ability to act. As she straightened in her seat, scanning the cabin, she realized something profound. No one around her had any idea what was coming. Parents, students, tourists, business travelers. All of them relied on her, unknowingly, to step into a role she had never anticipated holding today. The thought might have been overwhelming under normal circumstances, but she thrived under pressure. The tension, the uncertainty, the silent countdown of decisions waiting to be made. It was what she was trained for. Her eyes flicked back to the aisle, to the captain's seat at the front, and then to the nearest flight attendant, who was busy managing a beverage cart with an air of calm professionalism. None of them would know what she was thinking, but in that split second, she made a decision. She would not freeze. She would not panic. She would act. Row 19, once a quiet haven, had transformed into the front line. And in her mind, the first step was clear. Understand the situation, assert control, and prepare for what no one else on this flight could even imagine. The plane was still, yet every second stretched taut with tension. Outside, clouds drifted indifferently across the sky, unaware of the storm about to unfold inside. The silence in the cabin stretched for a few heartbeats longer than seemed possible. Whispers started to ripple through the rows, passengers exchanging puzzled looks, some nervously glancing toward the cockpit. The captain's voice came again, firmer this time, cutting through the murmur like a scalpel. Any combat pilots on board, please identify yourselves immediately. This is not a drill. Her pulse jumped. There was no mistaking it now. The tension was real, urgent, and immediate. Her training kicked in before fear could take hold. She straightened, sliding her hands into her lap, trying to mask the surge of adrenaline that made her fingers tremble just slightly. This was what she had prepared for, in countless simulations and exercises, yet the unpredictability of the real moment sent a shiver down her spine. Passengers began to murmur louder now, anxiety building. A woman a few rows ahead clutched her child, whispering reassurances she did not feel. A man fumbled with his phone, likely trying to record what he assumed might be an unusual announcement. Everyone waited, all unaware of the storm that had quietly been approaching. Only she knew that waiting would accomplish nothing. She rose, standing slowly to avoid alarming the cabin, and made her way toward the front. Each step felt heavier, weighted with the responsibility she hadn't expected to shoulder today. The flight attendant's eyes widened slightly as she approached, uncertainty flickering across their faces. They had been trained to handle emergencies, but even they did not know how to act in a scenario where the threat was undefined, where the pilot's comm command masked a danger invisible to the passengers. The cockpit door opened just enough to reveal the captain, his face taut, a faint line of sweat marking his brow. He looked at her, scanning the aisle with the practiced calm of a leader who had seen too many crises, but now his gaze locked onto hers. In that instant, recognition passed between them, a silent acknowledgement that she had the experience and training to take the lead. "Good," the captain said, voice lower now, edged with relief. "I need you up here. Sit rep, and then we'll take it from there." She nodded, not trusting herself to speak immediately. As she moved closer, the cabin's tension seemed to pulse around her. Every passenger instinctively felt the shift. Something serious was unfolding, something that demanded more than passive compliance. And yet, the source of their safety, the anchor in this storm, was just one person, the woman who had been resting in row 19 moments before. Inside the cockpit, the hum of instruments and the subtle, almost imperceptible vibrations of the engines were familiar, grounding. She moved quickly to assess the controls, reviewing the screens, indicators, and emergency protocols with eyes trained to spot even the smallest anomaly. The captain briefed her in clipped, professional language. A potential threat had been detected in the airspace ahead, unverified but concerning. Their communication channels had been compromised, and the passenger's safety depended on maintaining control until backup could arrive. Her mind raced, parsing possibilities, calculating reactions, planning contingencies. Every training scenario she had rehearsed flashed before her eyes. The drills she had endured countless times now became a living playbook. She spoke clearly, her voice firm but calm, outlining the first steps to the captain. Together, they established immediate priorities. Stabilize the aircraft, reassure passengers without revealing panic, and prepare for any escalation. Back in the cabin, passengers felt the subtle change in the atmosphere. Flight attendants moved with renewed purpose, guided by the quiet authority that now radiated from her presence. Her confidence was contagious, a beacon in a sea of uncertainty. People instinctively followed her lead, returning to their seats but paying attention to the instructions she gave, trusting the calm authority she projected. For her, there was no room for doubt. The moment demanded clarity, precision, and action. The ordinary flight of routine and calm had ended. What remained was the quiet, intense focus of someone who knew that the lives of everyone on board rested on her decisions. And she was ready. The moment to act had arrived. The initial tension of the announcement had settled into a steady pulse of focus. She moved with purpose, every gesture deliberate, commanding attention without raising alarm. Her eyes scanned the cabin, noting each passenger's position, each flight attendant's movement, and every potential point of vulnerability. In her mind, the plane was now a battlefield. Not with guns and explosions yet, but with strategy, timing, and human lives at stake. She began by establishing calm. "Everyone, please remain seated and follow the instructions of the flight attendants," she announced, her voice firm but steady. "We're handling the situation. You are safe." The words were simple, but they carried authority. Even the most nervous passengers paused, reassured by the certainty in her tone. It was a delicate balance, showing control without creating panic, but she had mastered this in countless high-pressure drills. Next, she moved to coordinate with the flight crew. The captain needed a complete picture, and she had to ensure the cabin could function efficiently in an emergency. "We need to secure the cabin first," she said, pointing out areas where passengers might inadvertently interfere with crew operations. "Keep aisles clear, check that everyone is restrained, and maintain communication with me if anything unusual occurs." The flight attendants nodded, their initial uncertainty replaced with trust in her competence. Her thoughts raced, calculating contingencies. What if the threat materialized physically inside the plane? What if the threat was external? An unauthorized aircraft, a potential hijacker, or even a sudden system failure? Each scenario required immediate, precise action. She mentally ran through each emergency protocol she had internalized over years of training. The difference now was that theory became reality, and hesitation was a luxury she could not afford. As she walked down the aisle, checking passengers discreetly, she spotted subtle signs of fear: sweaty palms, nervous glances, fidgeting hands. She offered brief nods and reassurances, small gestures that carried a weight far beyond their size. Each interaction reinforced her authority and helped maintain a calm, orderly environment. Panic spread faster than fire, and she knew that containment began with visible, confident leadership. Returning to the cockpit, she reviewed the instruments again. The flight path needed constant adjustment to avoid potential danger zones. The captain, trusting her judgment, deferred to her expertise on tactical maneuvers, leaving her to calculate precise adjustments. Outside, clouds scrolled past like indifferent witnesses, unaware of the human drama playing out in their midst. She made the decisions quietly, decisively, balancing speed with caution. Time stretched taut, and every second mattered. She could feel the weight of responsibility pressing down, yet it fueled her focus. Her training had prepared her for moments like this, but the stakes were real, the lives tangible. Every passenger, every crew member, relied on her ability to anticipate, react, and take control. And she would not fail. By the time the initial threat assessment was complete, she had already implemented several key measures. Passengers were secured, crew coordination was optimized, and the cockpit instruments indicated stability. She allowed herself a moment to exhale, but only briefly. This was merely the first stage. Ahead lay challenges she could only anticipate, never fully predict. Yet in that controlled chaos, one truth stood out clearly. She was no longer just a passenger in row 19. She was the anchor, the decision-maker, the protector. The plane's fate rested in her hands, and she had stepped forward, ready to do what needed to be done. The ordinary flight was gone. In its place, a mission had begun, and she was leading it.